Hello, everybody, back here. Just a little few disclaimers before this episode. First off, Christoph is not here. Our schedules cannot line up, so it's just myself and now former Prime Minister Aaron Blauheim. Secondly, this was recorded before, Aaron's resignation as Prime Minister, so a lot of this, the views do not necessarily reflect the government at this time anymore. Thirdly, last week for episode 1, I edited out a lot of the dead time, where there's nothing being said. I'm not going to do that this time. This is going to be pretty close to raw, minus maybe the background noise being edited out. So, just to kind of give the region a feel of what the interview was really like with minimal editing, if any. So, enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of BBC News on BBC Radio. My name is Zach Mickelson, and I am unfortunately not joined by my co-host Christoph Sebastian. Unfortunately, mine and Aaron's schedules this weekend for recording made it so that we were only available in the afternoon and evening, where Christoph is, in bed because he's in Central Europe, I believe. But I am, however, joined by somewhat recently elected Prime Minister, Aaron Reynolds Blauheim. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yes, you did.
Oh,
it's
good.
A pleasure to be here.
All right, cool. So we got another packed episode. People like Silver Steps ensure that I'm never going to be short on things to talk about.
Sorry. Well, at least she's making this term interesting as opposed to, being run of the mill.
Yeah. So first up is going to be cabinet movement. We've had a few cabinet officers replaced for various reasons. All of it voluntary, I believe. The original Home Secretary William Cavendish. Who was the original Home Secretary? I forget.
You're referring to the Foreign Office?
No, the original Home.
Doyle Lonigan.
Yeah. He offered his resignation. I believe he felt completely overwhelmed and was replaced by regional vet Jacob Mickelson. And then Vipor Mickelson had to tender his resignation due to an increased workload at his real-life job, and he was replaced by regional newcomer William Cavendish Beauclerk. Aaron, how did you come to these decisions for these positions, and specifically, what is Williams? What are his foreign policy qualifications to qualify him to hold that role in this time of foreign policy turmoil for the region?
To answer your first questions, I honestly didn't want any, let's say, issues to arise because I know that real life comes first in the case of Vibor, and in the case of Doyle, I couldn't really blame him in terms of inexperience since he was only has been a citizen of the region for the better part of a week since.
Right.
At the time of the election.
Okay.
And as for the question regarding Williams' experience in terms of foreign affairs, he was foreign minister under Vibor.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, he's working out pretty well.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. But you mentioned Doyle. Right, at the time of you being elected, he had been a citizen for 5 or 6 days?
Yes, I believe so.
Alright. This might come as To be clear, I supported you and voted for you, right? However, I guess the question that some people have asked was, why even give him the job then in the first place?
I've, to be honest with you, I figured that since I owed the the UNC's, I received the UNC support in my bid for prime minister. I figured might as well return the favor by having one of their members serve as part of the cabinets.
Oh, I didn't know he was in UNC. Good for him. He'll definitely get solid membership from McKillian. I'm down.
Killian was,
Hmm?
to be fair, Killian was my original choice for Home Secretary, but he suggested one of the other members of his party.
Oh, yeah. I think Killian's maybe easing himself back in. Though not really, because he's been quite active in Parliament, I believe. Alright, so moving on from that, I guess we elected a new CON chair in a completely for-show election. Ian Smith was elected Secretary General of the Council of Nations in an election against himself, which he shockingly won. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on that?
I genuinely wish him good luck in his term as Secretary General. From what I've seen of him so far, he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
I hope he keeps up the good work.
Yeah, he seems to be a talented enough, I guess, legislator, at least on the RP side. I hope he turns that into maybe a bid for Parliament one day to see what he can do there.
I'd say if he decides to go that route, I think he'd go pretty far.
Yeah. Okay. And since that election was completely boring, we're going to move on to the Citizenship Act 1 Citizenship Act amendment that was passed. It's been challenged in court. But anyways, Aaron, what are your thoughts on the Citizenship Act amendment?
With regards to the Citizenship Act, well, this is keeping in mind this was done before a certain court case has.
So what we talked about, which we might as well segue into after your comment, but go ahead.
I'd say that. Sorry, I'm trying to collect my words here.
Fair enough. We can edit this out. Hee hee.
Cool.
Aaron?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it now. My thoughts on the Citizenship Act, I'd say it it
Well,
sorry, I'm just trying to. I kind of have a. The Citizenship Act was, or rather, is a good idea in terms of protecting the regions from, shall we say, bad actors who try to
harm the region.
To disrupt what we have here.
Right.
Especially with what happened last October with the.
So for those of us that were not here last October, would you care to, have story time with Aaron?
Certainly. Last year, in October, the previous Prime Minister, who is now currently the sovereign, King George IX, David Allen had introduced an omnibus bill that, in essence, declared that the Empire of Great Britain
Mm-hmm.
be declared a prescribed region, and anyone who was associated, along with anyone who was associated with that region.
Basically, they had to pick a region.
Yes, of course, where they either had to stay with our region, the United Kingdom, or cut cut off cut off contact with EOGB, or vice versa.
Right.
And I believe that this Citizenship Act was to further protect ourselves from prescribed regions, of which in this case would be EOGB.
Okay. So do you think that this just acts to enhance those protections?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. So I guess we'll just set it. Theoretically, I added steps of Her Majesty government at the end because I added it in basically 5 seconds before I hit the record button. But we might as well segue into it, do it out of order. Silver Steps, a talented litigator without a single win in court, I believe, shockingly, um, has, she immediately challenged it, right? And
Yeah,
I mean, there are people, myself included, who believe that if somebody has already obtained citizenship, they do deserve due process rather than just being given the boot. So I guess, my first question is, will ma'am be serving as His Majesty's Government Counsel for the remainder of your term?
in addition to her duties as Member of Parliament.
Yeah, because she is defending this case on your behalf, right?
Yes, she is.
Okay. So is this something that we're gonna, is she, I guess, the quote unquote Attorney General, even though that position seems to no longer exist at this point?
I I don't think she'd serve in that capacity as Attorney General, since that role hasn't been filled since the Sebastian premiership, as far as I can recollect.
I know. I'm just asking. If something else comes up, are her services the ones that you think you'll probably just go forward with at this time?
I'd have to ask her about if she'd be willing, but
Okay.
at the moment she's. Mm,
All right. And what do you think about the points that some people have made about the maybe the extrajudicial bits being out of bounds?
all I have to say about the matter is they're entitled to what they think is, in regards to the act.
All right. Fair enough. I guess as Prime Minister, you can't really comment very much, can you?
Yeah, not really.
All right. Well, we'll move along swiftly to the Treasury Reform Act, which appears to be a piece of legislation straight from hell because it will not go away, be resolved in any kind. um, more like I think, wasn't there another version proposed recently? So we're like, what, version 4 or 5 now?
As far as I know, there's the Third Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. That's all I know. I don't think there's going to be a fifth one, but you never know.
Yeah. So, well, first off, you're also an MP as well as Prime Minister. So, what are your thoughts on the back and forth that this bill has had? What are your thoughts on the bill itself? And then, as Prime Minister, what are your thoughts on? And then I'll comment too because I'm Chief Secretary to the Treasury. And what are your thoughts about the news? The way this affects the government's role in creating a budget.
As an MP, I honestly have no issues with either amendments, but same could probably be said in my role as Prime Minister, I believe both of them provided impetus for the Treasury Department to try to find some way to create a budget quickly, or rather as soon as possible after cabinet has been formed after an election.
Right. And from my point of view, I think this gives, first off, it gets the words emergency budget firmly out of our legal language. Because I think that even if it were needed, that language alone would probably scare a lot of governments away from it, because that would almost be like them admitting failure, even though they just need to act. But public perception matters a lot more than what is actually right in lots of cases, which is unfortunate but true. Um, and it just gives us a lot more flexibility, even though me and Christoph and you as well, are furiously working on the budget. Which, I don't know if you want to comment on the budget work that's ongoing.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a good idea to get rid of terms such as emergency budget, because to bring up an example of real life with what happens with Truss's premiership and her mini budgets.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I believe that this was a good move to remove such language as well.
Right. And I mean, I guess we can both comment on how the current budget is coming along. What I can tell you is that it is hard, and specifically because income is very hard to project as far as taxation goes, especially in the summer where and as famously slumps like many other video games do in the summer in terms of activity. And for us, that means fewer posting income, which leads to less taxes, right? And so, I mean, there have been some adjustments made that I'm not going to comment specifically on unless Aaron wants to. Basically cut as much as I could, however, as far as salaries go. And there have been a few changes made to government grants that have been given out based on just the demand for them during the previous premiership. That way we're not earmarking money that will never be used, basically. But Aaron, as far as you're concerned, fees for the states and businesses as well as taxes, what are your views on those going up, down, or staying the same?
As far as fees go, I'd rather they don't rise.
Uh-huh.
That's definitely for certain, because I'd rather not subject the general public to more taxes.
Right. I agree. I think Lucas raised them quite a bit when I was working on the budget under his premiership back when he took over from Christoph. I mean, and Aaron, you were in office at the time, receiving a salary, so there were some draconian cuts to salaries, right?
Right, and that was in that case was to try to reduce the deficit as much as possible.
And they had a very minimal budget. This budget, I mean, obviously we're paying our culture secretary again, which is going to be another expense, but ultimately it needed one. I think Richard's already doing excellent work in the culture office. But
we're certainly getting our bang for our buck when it comes to that.
Yeah, but it's just, and again, the hard part of making a budget is trying to project our income, because we don't know truly if we put it on there, right, which we're going to have to. It is actually going to be a very good educated guess. It's not going to be exact, and it's probably going to be wrong, unless Aaron knows of a magic trick that I don't know about.
Which is why I suggested earlier that you just tax me 20,000 pounds.
I'm gonna tax the king 20,000 pounds, the rich bastard. I mean, all right. So
Because I'd rather get the government spent the deficit down as much as I can. Might as well contribute to the reducing it by just taxing myself specifically, not anybody else.
I hate to tell you, that's probably not legal. Um, but moving along to the Instrument of Removals Act, which I am unfortunately not especially educated on. So I'll leave it up to the MP over there, Aaron. What are your thoughts on the Instrument of Removals Act in Parliament, or the amendment to it?
With regard to the Instrument Removal Act, I believe the amendment was a good idea also, especially considering we honestly didn't use it that much, except for unfortunately, that one time with
Christoph?
yes, unfortunately, but ultimately we didn't have to use it as he resigned of his own accord.
Right. But I think it was a good exercise for Parliament to go through, for the MPs to have to consider, basically.
Yes, essentially it was as realistic of a trial run as it can be.
Without actually
And it
having to
was,
follow through.
of course.
So, what are your thoughts on the amendment right now?
Just simply that it's a good idea, that's all.
Okay.
I'd rather it was a good. It is a good amendment.
Yeah. And then there's a constitutional amendment before the House. Aaron, I don't know. I'm not a constitutional law expert. So, Aaron, before we dive into the constitutional amendment, you're an MP, been an MP for a while. Are there any changes to procedure on a constitutional amendment? You know, apart from a regular piece of legislation, the bill up on Capitol Hill, if you will.
The constitutional amendment regarding cabinet officers.
Yeah, but the first question is the process or any of the rules around how Parliament handles this different from a regular piece of legislation?
I'm gonna be honest with you. This has been in my experience, the first time I've dealt with the constitutional amendment such as this. So
Okay.
This is new territory for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. Constance she is very protective of her baby.
Yes, she is. That is for certain.
But let me just pull up the Constitution. The Parliament, by an absolute 2/3 majority vote of all authorized seats for its session in each chamber, shall have the power to present amendment. No amendment shall be ratified as part of this Constitution unless it shall obtain the approval of at least 2/3 of those voting on the question on the next election of the Prime Minister. Okay, so once Parliament passes it, there's going to have to be a referendum. So this is not anything that will affect your premiership. Unless provided that the Parliament may, when approving, so it could. They could select a different date for a referendum. I don't know if you will. What is the... It doesn't, I don't think this one says specifically when, right? So it would just happen at the next general election, I believe. Or the next election for Prime Minister if you don't happen to make it. Haha.
Oh no, I'm just planning to only doing this one term and then I'm gone.
Yeah.
So, I'd say if the next premier decides to hold a referendum, once this passes, of course. Once this passes, of course.
Well, I think this. I think it's. I think the electoral commissioner just has just runs a referendum, which we will have to pay him for. Um. Anyways, but back to the amendment itself. What do you think about it? Specifically as prime minister, since it could, in theory, affect you.
If it does affect me, I honestly have no issues with it, but I'd rather keep the current cabinet that I have, that's for sure.
Right, you gotta bring a solid cast.
Yeah, I have to say this cabinet that I currently have is what I've certainly been hoping for when it comes to my premiership. But if this does go through and it does affect my premiership, I certainly would abide by what parliaments would choose for cabinet officers.
Right. Okay, I mean, it doesn't seem to do much. Okay, the prime minister shall. Okay, so it looks like it doesn't take any power from the prime minister to affect his cabinet. It just more solidifies the deputy prime minister position to avoid that actually being eliminated. And it also says that you don't even have to have a specific deputy prime minister. You could just have, say, Christoph as chancellor. He's chancellor and DPM, whatever, right?
Like what Mark was when he was Home Secretary and DPM in the last premiership.
Right. Never mind. I'm not going to delve down into that. Let's just say Mark is a very salty individual. But moving on to the Potential for Local Governments Act amendment. It passed. And you were in Parliament when it passed. Local government's not really my thing, even though I'm theoretically a member of Windsor. And I don't think it's much your thing either, to be honest. But,
I'm in the same boat as well.
Yeah, but, I mean, what do you think about the prospect of somebody being in two?
I really wouldn't mind it. I do like the fact that in this amendment it was clarified that an individual who's a member of two local governments, local authorities, cannot serve in both of the respective governments to make things less messy, so to speak.
Yeah, it just keeps the same group of 3 or 4 from popping up both. Because at this point, they both exist for the sake of it rather than accomplishing anything.
Of course.
And let's see. Go ahead.
I'd say it's an overall good amendment in order to clarify, or rather to outline what needs to be established in case somebody decides to establish another local authority.
Which, I mean, this is an add. That is something that I don't think will ever be used, to be honest. I mean, Windsor seems to be flourishing, but I don't think the region has, the political willpower to maybe uphold the second one.
Yeah. And since it's essentially an open legislature, everyone's essentially a member of the government.
Right.
In Windsor.
So that is an interesting point. I mean, they have an open legislature. Let's say somebody establishes Northern Ireland again. If they have an elected legislature, I mean, would that preclude people in Windsor from running for that election? That is an interesting point that, I don't know, maybe needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it probably should need to be addressed, but since so far Windsor's work doing just fine, I don't think that's gonna pop up for a little while longer.
Right. Okay, we got our last step out, which was SEPS versus His Majesty's Government. That was a great segue from the Citizen Act Amendment. So, Aaron, anything from the government?
To be honest with you, when she filed that, She should have done it today, but instead she had to do it on my day off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, Aaron. Any announcements from the government before we go?
Um, other than no, not really.
Okay. I guess I'll say just pay attention to the contest the culture office is putting out for most posts. It's £1,000 for free. I mean, we'll tax you for it, but it's £1,000. I'm kidding. I don't know if it's taxable or not. I'd have to ask Christoph. Anyways, also, knowing the king, the coronation is bound to be a wild party, and a certain weatherman is bound to make an appearance, I'm sure. Staff.
Oh no, we're making sure that the staff's not going to make an appearance in order to crash the coronation. That's for certain.
I don't think you'll have a choice in the matter. And one announcement from the BBC. Most people don't know this, but we do sell advertising. And now that we have this additional medium to advertise on, you can talk to Klaus specifically or me, and then I can talk to Klaus and we can work out payment. And then you can talk to me and we can work out what the ad says, what the script is, what we're advertising, that sort of thing. So yeah, don't forget about that to get your business out there. And it could be, an RP business or an OOC business, as some might say, or it could be for your forum shop, whatever. And so with that, this is goodbye from myself and Aaron Reynolds-Bahan, Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for. How do you say that?
I just pronounce it Iselwyn.
It's probably wrong, knowing the Welsh.
It's Welsh, so I don't know a lick of Welsh, so that's the best
Yeah.
you're going to get out of me.
I mean, that's the best I got, but knowing it's Welsh, so we're probably both wrong. Anyways, yeah, that's a goodbye from us, and we will see you next week.
Take care.